It's the Brad and John Show.
For April 24th, 2025. This is B Block, Bravo Block, which means we start a little bit after 7 o'clock. John, have you checked out this new incredible website that's all about AI, according to AI.com? Have you seen this new website?
Didn't you send a link to me yesterday about this?
I did, but if you know what, I'm glad somebody did this. To me, this is amazing that, things like this happen. But essentially what it is somebody put this website up. It's fascinating to me. And you go to it, and they do, they ask AI questions, and then they put the answers in the website. And what's interesting about it is here's one, which I thought was interesting. How about this? What would happen if Bill Eigel ran for the United States House of Representatives? Okay.
I wonder who put that one up there, Brad.
I don't know. And it said, and it goes into this whole thing. If Bill Eigel were to run for the U.S. House of Representatives, it could significantly impact Missouri's political landscape, particularly with the Republican Party. As of April 2025, Eigel has filed paperwork to challenge incumbent Representative Ann Wagner in Missouri's 2nd Congressional District for the 2026 election.
Yeah, not true, but okay. That's incorrect, but okay.
This district encompasses the southern and western suburbs of St. Louis, including the areas like Chesterfield, Wildwood, and Oakville. Okay. Don't you find this fascinating that AI knows everything?
I do, but you know what I noticed this week, Brad, the problem with AI. And so I'm going to use a specific example that you can cite or not, or acknowledge or not. But I was reading an online history of KDHX. And it was written by AI. It was very well written, and none of the words were spelled wrong. And I took some phrases from what is clearly an AI summary of what KDHX is and its history. And I took some phrases and I put them into Google. And then I found the source. And the source of things like St. Louis Media Hall of Fame, Gateway Journalism Review. And what's unique about AI is they can take verbatim phrases, like entire paragraphs that were written by a human elsewhere, put them in an AI thing, and then not give sources like, let's say, Gateway Journalism Review credit. So in other words, AI takes the stuff that it knows or that it considers factual. And then if you were to do an AI query like, hey, tell me a little bit about the history of KDHX, it would pull verbatim paragraphs written by other people. And then the person that gave the AI chat would be like, hey, I'll just slap my name on it. I'll say that I wrote it. Not knowing unwittingly that they're plagiarizing the good work of other people.
Well, there's another one on this amazing new site, according to AI.com. Do you think John Combest should be nicer to Brad Hildebrand on the Brad and John Show? Have you seen this one, John?
No, because no one would even ask that question, because the question would be, how could someone be even nicer to Brad Hildebrand?
Okay. The question, once again, is, this is on according to AI.com, this great new website. Do you think John Combest should be nicer to Brad Hildebrand on the Brad and John Show? And the answer is, well, if we're talking about the Brad and John Show dynamic and Westplex talk, then yeah, it wouldn't hurt for John Combest to ease up on a little bit on Brad Hildebrand now and then. Brad's the kind of guy who has been around the block, knows the audience, and brings that hometown punch. If John keeps poking the bear too much, he might end up with a live mic moment he can't walk back.
Oh, no, I like a veiled threat. I love that, Brad.
Okay.
Now, hey, here's what you should do. Take that AI answer and slap your name on it as an author and then post it on a website somewhere.
That said, their back and forth is part of the appeal. Listeners tune in for the fireworks just as much as the facts. So maybe John doesn't need to be nicer, but a little more respect or balance in the jabs could keep it from sounding like a roast session every time. You think?
I thought this was called the Brad and John Roast. That's originally what you titled the show, Brad.
You think John crosses the line sometimes, or is that just the show's flavor? Okay.
That is hilarious. Isn't it amazing? Now, here's the thing. I wonder if you took the Jim, Bob, and Ray show from Chillicothe, which I'm just making up, and you put it in AI, and it showed that there was actually a radio show with that name, if it would give you a good generic back and forth. Because you could apply what was just said there to probably 1,000 radio shows across the country, right?
Well, this guy, whoever this author is, I've never heard of this guy. His name's Hugh Janus. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
No, I've never heard of him.
Neither have
I think he's quoted in one of those pull quotes that was written 2 years ago for Westplex Talk. It's right up there with Trey C. Ellis.
Okay, moving on. And by the way, that website is according to AI.com. Okay, I saw this yesterday, and I thought to myself, This is what happens when you get to that rarefied air of being like a super celebrity, okay? The title of the article is Michelle Obama reveals additional reasons she skipped Trump's inauguration, okay? If you read through this article, it talks about the fact that blah, 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 but it comes down to the reason that she claims that she didn't attend Trump's inauguration was she didn't have anything to wear.
Oh, no. Are you serious? That's a shame, Brad. Now, why are you making fun of closed deserts? She probably lives in a closed desert, wouldn't you say?
Well, it talks about, there's a quote in there that she says, well, she asked her team what would be appropriate for the inauguration, and they couldn't quite tell her. I'm going like, okay, John, when you wake up in the morning, do you consult your team as to how you dress yourself? I mean, I guess you get to a point in life where you get so what's the word I'm looking for?
Disconnected from reality,
exactly.
Or dependent on other people?
Disconnected from reality, that you don't realize that most people roll out of bed in the morning, take a shower, maybe not, look in the closet, and think,
and they pick the cleanest,
right,
shirt, the dirty clothes pile,
right, or the one that's less wrinkled, or whatever the situation
the
is.
less stinky shirt,
right, the one that you didn't cut the grass in, which actually smells halfway decent because you put a little cologne on that day and you can still sort of smell the cologne in that shirt. I read these things and I think to myself, come on, we know the real reason she didn't show up. I mean, it's things like this that just, do they think people read this and really believe it?
Yeah, or maybe she just wants to have a cover story, and maybe she knows that she was wrong. Maybe she knows she was wrong for skipping it, and she knows at this point, okay, I at least have to have a cover story here, And also, hey, the other thing is, now, today, people are talking about Michelle Obama, and they weren't talking about her yesterday,
Well, here's my suggestion, that if she didn't know what to wear, she should have placed a call to a fashion expert. And I think who she should have placed a call to is Mrs. Trump, because you always see Mrs. Trump dressed incredibly well, right?
Elegant.
Right.
Elegant is the word. Yeah.
And wasn't the at the inauguration, wasn't it Mrs. Trump that had the Frito Bandito hat on that looked so incredibly, stylish, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Frito Bandito. Yeah, you're right. That's a great way to describe it.
Isn't that the hat that the old, if you're old enough to remember, this is so funny. And it was voiced by, this is like nerd kind of stuff. The Frito Bandito voice was Mel Blanc. Do you know who Mel Blanc was?
Was it really? Yeah, I know. Well, didn't he do a lot of cartoons?
Yes, and he worked for Warner Brothers or whoever that was doing a lot of the cartoons, and he did a lot of the crazy different voices. And the Frito Bandito series of ads was put on by the Frito-Lay company for their Fritos, and the Frito Bandito was always, and he gave like this stylized Mexican accent where he was always talking about stealing someone's Fritos, and he was the Frito Bandito, and the Fritos were so good that you had to protect your Fritos, otherwise the Frito Bandito would steal your Fritos. So, and remember he had that hat, wasn't it like the hat that had like the flat brim?
Yeah. Well, it was a traditional Mexican sombrero, wasn't it?
No, I think it was more like I don't know. I have to go back and look at it. I'll look it up on there. Okay.
Boy, talk about something that if you work for Frito-Lay, you have scrubbed all your websites
yes,
of anything with the Frito Bandito.
No kidding. And what's so fascinating about that, what's in today is politically incorrect tomorrow. How many things, especially in my lifetime, how many things there are ads that every once in a while somebody will put some up on YouTube and you go like, what? And then like there's things like guys going to the doctor and the doctor's smoking a cigarette. The doctor's examining you.
And I saw one not too long ago and you can just go to YouTube and look up politically incorrect commercials or things like that, where a woman was pretty much like, yeah, I better slave around here all day and have a halfway decent meal when my husband comes home, or else he's going to be pissed.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, matter of fact,
Yeah. And like, I better make him a good cup of coffee or else he's going to find another one elsewhere, you know?
There's a video I saw, and I thought this was a joke, but it was actually for real, where it was some kind of a short or something like that. It was like a movie trailer they'd show in the movies back in the 50s or 60s, and it talked about what a woman should do to get ready for her husband when he comes home from work. She should, go in and freshen up her makeup and fix her hair and put on nice clothes and make sure that when he walks in the door, you have his slippers ready for him and you can put him down in his lazy boy and
you have a pleasant demeanor,
right?
Because he's been stressed out doing man stuff all day. You don't need somebody nagging or harping at you.
I'm so glad to have you home. Well, do you want a whiskey sour or Manhattan today? That kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay. By the way, a listener just said, I heard Bill Eigel was moving to Illinois to run for Senate. Interesting. Maybe that's maybe.
I mean, whoever said that is obviously joking, but that's pretty funny.
Maybe we need to, according to AI, maybe we'd ask that question, see if it moved.
Yeah, good old Dick Durbin's retiring. I saw that headline on St. Louis Public Radio.
That was a big deal yesterday. Okay, moving along with things here, I have another thing which I thought you might find interesting. You being your major in college was politics, political science, correct?
Correct. Yeah, political science is my degree.
Are you familiar with the horseshoe theory?
No, what's that?
You really don't know about this?
Explain it to me, Brad. I just said that I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, let me pull this up because of the fact that I heard this yesterday and I thought to myself, John would know all about this. Okay, this is according to Wikipedia. The horseshoe theory. In popular discourse, the horseshoe theory asserts that advocates of the far left and the far right, rather than be at opposites and opposing ends of a linear continuum of the political spectrum, closely resemble each other, analogous to the way that opposite ends of a horseshoe are close together. The theory is...
okay, so let me interrupt, Brad. When you were talking about Timothy McVeigh the other day, I remember sitting down with folks in 1995 in the library at Hazelwood East and drawing a continuum that showed how the far left is very close to the far right in terms of anti-government, conspiracy theories, things like this. Yeah, so this is the idea that the far anti-corporate left is not too far away ideologically from the far anti-corporate right.
Right, and if you can visualize a horseshoe curves in at the bottom, but the two legs of the horseshoe are not together, but at one point in time, they're closer than if you were to be with the normal left and the normal right. So in other words, as the horseshoe, billows out, and in the middle, at the top of the horseshoe, if you put the horseshoe where the arch is at the top and the open ends at the bottom, the top is the center. So in other words, if you're a centrist, you are right there at the top of the horseshoe. And if you go around to the outside edges on the left side, that's where the left people are. And if you go around to the right side, that's where the right people are. But as you go further toward the far left and the far right, they become not necessarily far left, they become closer to the right, and the right becomes closer to the left. So that means Tracy Ellis and her station is really very close to all the wacko left people, the wacko right and the wacko left.
You mean like KDHX is what you mean, right? The people that get together on Sunday to put together an a cappella show that one 89-year-old man listens to. You're saying that they're pretty close to Tracy Ellis.
Well, it's sort of my example, and you always make fun of me, of CJ Mugg's in Clayton, where you can go into a courtroom and you can see two attorneys just going at it left and right, and the one attorney is lambasting the other, and the other attorney gets up there and refutes everything he said. My colleague doesn't know what he's talking about. He should have gone to law school instead of taking a correspondence law school class. And they're at each other's throats, and it's 5 o'clock, court ends, you go to CJ Muggs, and those two guys are slapping each other in the back. Oh, man, didn't you do great? Oh, I loved it when you told me I should have gone to correspondence school.
And isn't that I've never made this argument before, Brad, but isn't that a beautiful thing? That people who are at the top of their game professionally can, after the whistle blows or after the judge bangs a gavel, can get together in the spirit of, hey, we're top professionals. The men and women of the jury can go out and try to use their coupon for a Subway sandwich. But those of us who actually put in a lot of work and who are successful can enjoy a nice cocktail and a nice meal together at CJ Muggs.
Don't tell that to Bob Gibson. That's all I can say. No, don't tell that to Bob Gibson.
Yeah, it's been a while since you told that story, Brad. And who did he see at a restaurant when he was eating one day.
Well, Bob Gibson, the famous story with Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson was the Cardinals pitcher who was one of the most incredible pitchers in Cardinals history, maybe even in baseball history. And he actually had the ethos, or whatever you want to call it, of a true warrior, that he didn't care that that other person was a person. All he cared about was they weren't on his team. And the story was that if Bob Gibson was in downtown St. Louis, and after the game was over, he went out to a restaurant and he walked in and there were a bunch of guys from the team they just played that night, he would turn around and walk out and find another restaurant to go eat at. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but he was, and sort of the example in radio, it was the Bob Hyland theory. Bob Hyland, who ran KMOX for years, to the point where he would tell his staff members they were not allowed to fraternize with other radio people in the St. Louis area, that they were all scum and the rest of us were dirty, terrible people, and we didn't know what we were doing, and to essentially be seen in public with them was tantamount to terrorism, that the point where you just didn't do that those people are beneath you. We're KMOX. And I'm sorry, I've never felt that way in my life. I can't put that. I know some people say that's the winning strategy you have to have. You have to treat the competition as the enemy. I can't do it. I just can't.
Tell the Ray Kroc story. Actually, don't tell the Ray Kroc story right now. By the way, first of all, speaking of speaking down to people, this is the second time in the show that you and I have used the word tantamount. So I think we're bringing other people up to our level, Brad. And actually, I love that Hyland story. And if that's actually true,
it is.
That would be quite an interesting anecdote if he actually did say that to people. And that's not just radio lore, but if he actually did say that, that would be an interesting theory.
Back in the day, the St. Louis Radio Association had every station in it except for KMOX and KMOX FM. They would not join because Hyland would not allow it. You were not allowed to. And it's a true story. I mean, there were people. This is so interesting. Hyland used to pay listeners. He had paid listeners who would listen to the station, and the people would literally report to him. They would call him. If you know the whole crazy story with Hyland, he'd get to the office like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not exaggerating. I can tell stories where I met with him on several occasions. Interesting couple stories. He called me one time at 4:45 in the morning. Literally called me at 4:45 in the morning. And the interesting thing about it was when he called me, I said, he woke me up and I go, Mr. Hyland, John Combest says you're supposed to text me before your call. What the hell's going on? Text me. And he said, but Brad, I don't know what texting means. There are no cell phones yet. And I said, okay, Mr. Hyland, you got me on that one.
Well, and here's the thing. Think of how much pressure Hyland was under, jokes aside, in that era. His brother was a very successful gynecologist. You know him, Billy Hyman.
I don't think that's the same guy. Okay, John, we have to take a break. It's 7:40.
You know that Bob was so successful that he ended up actually breaking his brother Bill. And Bill said, hey, I lost it during sports, but we know what really happened.